Hi, I'm Greg LoPiccolo. I'm the CEO of ToneStone, which is an American company sitting sort of at the intersection of music and gaming. We're developing um, gameplay that uses musical componentry so that you can actually explore musical expression through gameplay. So the first question I'm being asked is, why did you go into the gaming industry and what are you doing now? So the first half, I went into the gaming industry a long time ago, 1993 or 94. Um, and I was not a gamer. I was basically asked to write music for a game that ended up turning into System Shock, which was developed by Looking Glass Technologies, and I was hired to develop the music and record all the sound effects and the speech and so forth. And that started at a career at Looking Glass, where I did a lot of sound and video stuff for a while, and then I ended up as a creative director. I was the project director for Thief, and that was the last thing I worked on um, for Looking Glass. And then I was recruited by Harmonix when they were starting up in 1998 to be their director of product development. And then I spent basically most of my career at Harmonix working with that team on lots of different music games, including Frequency and Amplitude, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, Dance Central, uh, lots of games. And I was there until 2017 when I took a break, and then in 2019 I founded ToneStone, and I've been working on ToneStone ever since, just working on music gaming. How do I would I predict that the gaming industry will change in the next few years? Uh, I I don't totally know there, but there's certainly some trends that I see sort of extending and accelerating. One of which I think that as tools get better, um, more and more enthusiasts and hobbyists and end users are going to be creating more and more content. That it's going to be less about big studios just building AAA games and more about um, players contributing to ecosystems. Because I think as the tools get better and kind of AAA polish moves its way down the production chain, so that um, that people without big budgets or deep skill sets can actually make really cool stuff. That you're going to see more and more of that. There's going to be a lot more kind of collaborative creation. I think like giant AAA games will still exist, but I think a lot of the creative energy is going to be even in environments you already see, that have like taken root, like Roblox. I think things like Fortnite are going to become more like Roblox in that way, where the tools, um, where Epic has been very public about developing those tools, and I think they're going to release them soon. I think you're going to see more and more of that kind of activity where users have the tools to make really compelling content, and I think that's really exciting. How do I see the role of blockchain technology evolving in the gaming industry in the years 2023 to 2025? The short answer is I don't know, and I'm not sure if anyone knows, because I think we're very much in this mode where people are trying lots of things, most of which won't work, and some of which will. Um, in the little corner of this world that I inhabit, I think the promise is really about having, certainly in the music space, having people be able to like generate intellectual property, content, and own it, and then be able to deploy in flexible ways. Um, it's so I think just like revolutionary sort of like rights management and intellectual property management is what this tool set is best suited for. And we'll start to get some traction in some interesting ways. Maybe in sort of music gaming space, which is the part that I know the most about, but I could imagine in other genres as well. That's the part that seems to most likely to me. A lot of the other stuff, boy, I don't really know. I think a lot of it's not going to work, which is fine. Like this is how we learn. We build things and watch things succeed and fail. But I don't have a lot of instinct about a lot of the other things that people are trying to develop. A lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. How do I envision the convergence of music and gaming in the near future? So I've been ToneStone is built on this premise that there should be, there's a new renaissance in music gaming that's on the way. The basic music gaming had this like huge heyday with Guitar Hero and Rock Band 15 years ago, and then it kind of collapsed down into, now music gaming is very much a niche, a niche pastime. There's a few successes like Beat Saber, you could say, has been quite successful and so forth. But there hasn't been a lot of like innovation in the music game space. It's basically all the same mechanics that were developed in the early 2000s, late 90s. Specifically rhythm action. Um, and what I'm working toward and hoping to kind of release into the world is a music game system that's that's not just a simple beat match mechanic, but actually takes musical content, musical attributes, and so forth, and lets people mess with them in a creative way, but in a gameplay context, very much like they do with lots of other game genres like RPGs or real-time strategy games or whatever, where you have a lot deeper and richer set of creative inputs. So I envision music games where like as you play the game, you're making music. You're not just like pretending to follow along with somebody else's music. You're actually making musical decisions as part of gameplay. And I think that's going to happen, and I think it's going to be huge. What role do I see virtual reality and augmented reality playing in the gaming industry in the next few years? Um, Candidly, I think it has an enormous amount to do with whatever Apple releases. Because I've been, an enthusiastic user of VR stuff. I got an Oculus Rift in 2015, 2016. I have a Quest. I've tried almost everything. I love the perception of being in VR and so forth. But to be honest, the sort of, classic Oculus paradigm where you just like, strap a brick to the front of your face and you're isolated from everything, I think has a ceiling. I don't think it's going to ever develop beyond a niche, because even though I personally love it, being isolated from your surroundings in that way, I think is just not that appealing to a lot of people. Like there's some real limitations. And I think the way past that is probably like really good next gen, sophisticated augmented reality hardware of the sort that I assume Apple is working on, but I don't know. None of us know until they release it. But if there's a step change there, if the hardware gets good enough so that you can blend, um, that you can do like true augmented reality in a way that feels natural, that people can integrate into their lifestyle, then I think there's like tons of possibilities to basically overlay data and into a real environment. And I'm like lots of people, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes out. But something like that, some kind of technological breakthrough, I think is going to be necessary before this really mass adoption of VR. I think it's going to be more AR, because like VR just has some, even, I like it personally, but I think it has some inherent limitations because it's so isolating socially. How do I see the use of AI and machine learning evolving in the game industry in coming years? I guess a two-part answer. Like the most important thing is we're just now seeing these tools actually being like pragmatically useful in some ways that are accessible to like like end users or developers. I think there's going to be some very unpredictable things that happen that are going to surprise us all. The part that seems pretty likely is that a lot of the kind of generative stuff that exists in Stable Diffusion or DALL-E and so forth, that will migrate to sound and speech and writing as it already is, such that I think it'll be easier and cheaper to create high quality assets to put into a game, that you'll be like games will look better and sound better with a lot less development effort, because these generative systems will be capable of pumping out content that's certainly good enough to populate a virtual world, for instance. It won't be perfect, but it won't need to be perfect, and it'll be like flexible and cheap, and it will again push the cost of entry down. So lots of people like indie teams will be able to do work that really resembles what AAA teams can do now at much lower price points. That's like the leading edge of that is obviously the visual stuff is like the most impressive. Actually, text stuff too. I've been messing around with Chat GPT, and it's frustratingly limited, but also amazing, right? These are like amazing tools. But the visual stuff seems like the farthest along. But everybody in the music space is braced for that to be true, relatively soon. I think the music space is going to be exactly the same, where you can just, ask for content of a specific style, and it'll hand you stuff that's, good enough. So that's the part, so sort of like content generation, that seems like the no-brainer. Um, I know some folks that are working on more sophisticated applications where you could have the same thing, that same kind of generative process apply to the creation of entire virtual worlds or seeding virtual world engines with content and parameters, so that you could like tune an entire world very quickly at a high level. But there's people that know a lot more about that stuff than I do. I just know that it's happening, but I don't know a lot of the details. In my opinion, what will be the most important factors driving growth in the gaming industry in 2023 to 2025? I don't know if I have a lot of insight about this, but again, like the thing that I will tell you this, the thing that's of most interest to me, and I think of the most interest to a lot of people, is the ways in which the tools will both, ML and AI tools, and just, generally the tools getting enough better so that a lot more creative power ends up in the hands of smaller teams and individuals who can do like really impressive work and explore new innovative ideas uh, at a lot lower budgets. So a lot more people are going to be doing interesting stuff in any kind of experimental environment. Most of the stuff that people come up with isn't that great, but then a few things poke through, and those will end up being sort of like the North Stars for the next generation of development. What I hope will happen is that we'll see an explosion of creativity and some really cool new ideas that will drive the emergence of new genres, including what I'm hoping is like the reemergence of music gaming, but not limited to that. I think there's going to be all kinds of interesting new social gaming dynamics and so forth that will emerge as more and more people have access to really good tools.